Bigfoot stomping in the dark, dark night. Aliens dancing in the pale moonlight. Cryptid chatter blowing up the airwaves. Dr. Hogwash gonna make your day. Dr. Hogwash, yeah, he's the boss. Taking all the secrets and scrubbing off the gloss. Dr. Hogwash, awesome. Turn it up loud. The truth is stranger and it's drawing a crowd. Oh, Sasquatch tracks, Roswell facts, tinfoil hats. Dr. Hogwash got your back. Dr. Hogwash, oh yeah, don't stop. Turn it up. It's a truth drop. Dr. Hogwash, oh yeah, don't stop. You ready now? Let's go pop, pop, pop.
Greetings, truth travelers, frequency surfers, and people who clicked this episode by accident. I am Dr. Hogwash, PhD, MD, LMNOP, broadcasting live from a windowless room filled with forbidden footnotes and books that start with phrases like, "This text was removed from the canon in 397 AD for narrative control reasons." Today's episode is not about whether ancient people saw strange things in the sky. That part is settled. They did. A lot. Repeatedly. With witnesses and detailed schematics. No, today's episode is about why so many ancient texts read less like bedtime stories and more like badly redacted UFO reports. Because somewhere between "let there be light" and "be not afraid," something odd happened. So loosen your sandals, hide your oxen, and remember, if an ancient text says a glowing being descended from the sky in a craft of fire and noise, that is not a metaphor. That is a press release written by someone who did not have the word spaceship. Let's begin. Segment 1. The problem with ancient people being primitive. One of the biggest assumptions we carry around like intellectual lint is that ancient humans were clueless, that they stared at the sky, drooled a little, and invented gods to explain rain. But ancient people were not stupid. They were observational. They tracked stars with extreme precision. They built structures aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and celestial events we still argue about on Reddit. They mapped the heavens without telescopes and recorded events without adjectives like kinda. So when ancient texts across multiple civilizations, separated by oceans and millennia, describe the same categories of phenomena, the coincidence meter begins to sweat. Let's talk receipts. Segment 2. The Bible and the Sky Problem. Let's start with the most heavily edited anthology in human history, the Bible. Ezekiel's Wheel, the original UFO diagram. Ezekiel chapter 1 is not subtle. He describes a great cloud with flashing fire, a loud rushing sound, a craft that descends from the sky, wheels within wheels, shining metal, beings that look humanoid but not quite, and movement that defies gravity. This is not poetry. This is a man desperately trying to explain machinery to a Bronze Age audience. Ezekiel is not saying, "I felt God's presence." He is saying, "I saw something land, it was loud, it glowed, it moved weird, and I am unsettled." Also, crucially, he was told to write it down, which is an interesting request if you are an all-powerful, omniscient deity who normally prefers burning bushes and vibes. Elijah's exit strategy. Elijah does not die. He is taken up into the sky in a chariot of fire. Not a cloud, not a dream, not an angel hug, a vehicle. And again, witnesses. Ancient gods are suspiciously obsessed with vertical takeoff and landing. Be not afraid is doing a lot of work. Whenever an angel appears, the first thing they say is not hello, it's do not be afraid, which suggests fear was the default response. These beings are described as blindingly bright, loud, non-human in appearance, wearing what sounds like armor, arriving suddenly, communicating telepathically or via command. That is not a Hallmark angel. That is a being that has caused panic before. Segment 3. The books they didn't want you reading. Now let's talk about the texts that mysteriously didn't make the final cut. The Book of Enoch. Too much information. The Book of Enoch was wildly popular in early Christianity, quoted by the New Testament, then quietly shown the door. Why? Because Enoch describes the Watchers, beings descending from the sky, teaching humans technology, metallurgy, astronomy, and genetics, interbreeding with humans, producing hybrid offspring. This text straight up says, yes, advanced beings came down, messed with humanity, and it went badly. That is not theology. That is a warning label. Segment 4. Sumeria, where it all gets uncomfortable. If you want ancient aliens to sit up straight, you say one word, Anunnaki. The Sumerians didn't worship vague sky spirits. They named them, cataloged them, assigned job titles. The Anunnaki came from the sky, descended to Earth, created humanity as a labor force, required gold, lived among humans, ruled as kings. This is not mythological fluff. This is administrative record-keeping. Sumerian tablets read like, then Enki said this, then the gods argued, then humans were modified. That is not a creation myth. That is a meeting summary. Segment 5. India's Flying Machines. The Mahabharata and Ramayana describe vimanas, flying craft with weapons that sound suspiciously like energy beams, explosions described like nuclear detonations, cities destroyed in ways that mirror radiation damage, shields, aerial combat. Again, this is not symbolic. These texts read like, here is how the machine moved, here is what it did, here is what happened when it fired. Ancient authors did not invent technological detail for fun. Segment 6. Mesoamerica. The Sky Visitors with Schedules. The Maya and Aztec gods. Arrived from the sky, promised to return, were associated with Venus, taught mathematics, astronomy, and architecture. Quetzalcoatl is not a spirit. He is described as a pale, bearded being who arrives, civilizes, and leaves. And the calendars. These civilizations tracked time with absurd precision, as if something important was expected to arrive again. Segment 7. Why everyone draws the same things. Across continents, we see winged beings, sky disks, beings descending in light, knowledge transfers, gods who leave and promise return. Either one. Ancient humans hallucinated the same story worldwide. 2. This is archetypal psychology. 3. Or someone was showing up regularly enough to become part of cultural memory. One of these explanations requires fewer mental gymnastics. The vocabulary problem. Or try explaining a jet to a goat herder. One of the laziest rebuttals to ancient contact stories is this. They didn't know what they were seeing, so they made it symbolic. Which sounds reasonable until you think about it for more than 6 seconds. Ancient people did not lack intelligence. They lacked terminology. If you showed a modern smartphone to someone from 2,000 years ago, you wouldn't get the word iPhone. You'd get something like a smooth black tablet that speaks, glows, and contains distant voices, which incidentally sounds exactly like something we'd later call a magical artifact and argue about for centuries. Ancient writers described the world using the closest available language they had, not metaphorical language, functional language. If something flew, it was a bird or a chariot. If something glowed, it was fire. If something was powerful, it was divine. If something spoke without a visible mouth, it was a god. Not because it was a god, but because there was no other category. Technology doesn't translate backward well. We forget that modern language is built on centuries of industrial context. Words like engine, circuit, signal, frequency, radiation, artificial. These concepts did not exist linguistically, so ancient observers described effects, not mechanisms. Ezekiel doesn't say anti-gravity propulsion. He says the wheels moved without turning. That's not poetic flair. That's confusion. He doesn't say metal alloy. He says glowing, polished, electrum-like substance. He doesn't say pilot. He says beings that stood beside the craft, because that's what he saw. Why everything becomes a metaphor later. Here's the trick history pulls. First generation, eyewitnesses. Second generation, retellings. Third generation, theology. Fourth generation, symbolism. By the time scholars get involved, the assumption is already baked in that this must mean something else. But what if it doesn't? What if chariot of fire means a vehicle that emits light, heat, and sound? What if pillar of cloud by day and fire by night means a hovering object with changing visibility? What if the voice of God means communication from a source that could not be seen? These aren't metaphors, they're workarounds. Ancient descriptions are consistent because limitations are consistent. This is the part that gets uncomfortable. Ancient people across cultures use the same descriptive shortcuts. Fire, wheels, clouds, thunder, shining beings, descent from the sky. Not because they copied each other, but because human language hits the same wall every time it tries to describe unfamiliar technology. You don't invent new words under stress. You reach for the nearest one. We do this too. We're just bad at admitting it. Early pilots described UFOs as flying saucers, disks, luminous objects. Not because they knew what they were, but because that's all the vocabulary they had in the moment. If modern people with radar and physics degrees struggle to describe these things without resorting to food shapes, imagine being a shepherd with a stylus. The question isn't, why is it poetic? The question is, why does the poetry keep describing machinery? Why does the symbolism keep obeying physics? Why do gods arrive, depart, travel, argue, require resources, and issue instructions like supervisors? And why, when the technology disappears from our sky, does the language slowly turn mystical? That's not evidence of imagination. That's evidence of lost context. Segment 8. Why it stopped. Or did it? So why don't they show up anymore? Possibilities. Humanity became too unstable. The experiment ended. The rules changed. Or they never left. Ancient texts don't say the gods vanished. They say the gods withdrew, which is not the same thing. Now, am I saying ancient astronauts definitely came to Earth, edited our DNA, taught us how to stack rocks, and then vanished into the cosmic HOA? My mind is open to the possibility. I am merely saying that if you remove the modern bias, read the texts as eyewitness accounts, and assume ancient humans were competent observers, the story changes dramatically. At minimum, something happened. Something loud. Something bright. Something that demanded to be written down. And somewhere in the margins of history, someone decided we didn't need to remember it. As always, stay curious, stay skeptical, and if a glowing being descends from the sky and asks you not to be afraid, ask what department they're from. Thank you for watching and keeping an open mind. Until next time, keep your feet on the ground and your eyes on the footnotes. Dr. Hogwash, out.